All right. Well, hello, everyone. It is good to see you all. Um, let's do a couple of housekeeping elements before we go ahead and get started. So for those of you who are watching this later on, the draft method section that was due in week 9 is now available to be turned in on my section. I've emailed Dr. G, so by the time you watch this, it should be available to turn in his section as well. So my apologies about that. I will go through after class and verify that there aren't any other activities that have that date issues. So you should be good to go for the rest of the semester on those. Next week, I believe, looking. Let's see, what are we on right now? We're on 10 now. Okay. Next week is the BDS for those of you who are on track 2. So if you have any issues with that, let me know. How have those been going for everyone? I haven't checked in. I know everyone, there's lots of different places, but is everyone, are you keeping up with those? Have you completely forgot about them? Do you completely hate them? For those of you who just started, for those of you who have been here a while, I know you totally hate them. Good. Sarah's like, yeah, they're fine. Excellent. That means we're doing something right to start. Excellent. So any questions with BDS? We're good? Great. This is a pretty straightforward class when it comes to BDS modules. So week 10, we're 2/3 of the way through the semester, which is absolutely insane. And with this week, having turned in the draft of your method section, first of all, I know I'm going to be getting to both your lit reviews and your method sections to give some feedback, hopefully this week, if not this week, then next. But as we get ready to start turning in the finals of our lit review and method, first thing that I want to say is that, so week 11, your lit review final is due. Week 13, your methods final is due. And then you put it all together with some final feedback. I very much consider those to be soft due dates. You're definitely not going to get points taken off if you don't get them in by those dates. But at the same time, you really want to make sure that you're not pushing it too far back, just so you have an opportunity to read, put it all together, and make sure that you like where it is by the time you turn in your final drafts. It is also the time when we start having the opportunity for some presentations. Obviously, this is not a data presentation, but this is an opportunity for you guys to provide and models to the class and get feedback from others in the class, primarily on how you have set up your lit review. That's going to be the really the focus. I don't want to say that your presentations should not include the method section. They definitely should, but this is an opportunity where, if you have a 10 to 15 minute presentation, let's call it 15 minutes, give it the long side, spend 12 or 13 minutes, 75% of your slides on your lit review, and really have an opportunity to think out what you would want to present in a lit review in a very meaningful way. This is one of the things that this is an opportunity to shape some behavior that we really haven't worked on in the past. And I think this is a great opportunity to take advantage of that. For those of you who have been around a while, I'll put it this way. And for those of you who are just starting, I'll give you a little different context. But one of the things that there's a tendency to do in a lit review in particular is, one, either write out like the whole study on a slide, or two, write out everything you want to say about that study on a slide. And neither of those things are what you actually want to do. So again, for those of you who have been around a while, maybe some of you have developed some bad habits on putting together PowerPoints as it relates to the lit review. For those of you who are just starting, you're probably not sure where to even start when it comes to presenting a lit review. So this is a good opportunity to get feedback on that in a really constructive way. What I like about the focus on the lit review now is it's an opportunity for each of you to emit a lot of behavior. All right. You will never, in a 15-minute presentation down the line, you will never spend 12 minutes on a lit review. You'll spend 2 or 3 minutes on a lit review. But by emitting a lot of behavior surrounding presenting the lit review now, you give us an opportunity to give you feedback and shape that behavior down. So that's something that you really want to be able to take advantage of, like where I can say, all right, these are all the things I want to say. And then through listening through others and getting direct feedback from us, we will be able to shape that behavior into, okay, I don't need to focus so much on this. I need to spend a little bit more time on this. I need to develop this area a little bit more. So if I were thinking about my process from now until the end of the semester, I've now hopefully turned in my lit review. I've turned in my method section. I'm hopefully going to get feedback on that in the next week or so. But already I'm starting to put together an outline of what I want to put in my presentation. The earlier you present, while it's scary, the earlier you present, the more likely you are to be able to incorporate the feedback that you get from that presentation into your final draft, or rather your final project. All right. So presenting again, for those of you who are just getting started, presenting in this program is something that we do early and often. It can be scary. It can be exciting. It's fun when you get to the end and you're looking forward to presenting and being like, hey, look what I did, look what I have. But I very much understand that at the beginning, it's definitely going to be intimidating. Jump in with both feet. Just put yourself out there, say what you want to say, and get that feedback. That's really the best way to do it. And for those of you who have been around a while, what I recommend that you guys do is use this as an opportunity to try some new things. Use this as an opportunity to either shape your presentation a little bit differently. Or if you are one of those people that's used to writing out everything that you say on your PowerPoint, start playing around with bullets and notes. And presenting your information in a way that is a little bit more palatable for a larger data presentation, whether it be at a conference or whether it be, sorry, my cat is chasing the light behind me, if you can see that. Whether it's a conference, whether it's another class, whether it's your major portfolio, whatever it may be, being able to expand what you've done before in new ways. So that's really what I would like you guys to think about taking the opportunity to do. In terms of timeline, I really think, so we have this week, we have next week, then we have spring break. If anybody is in a position where you would be ready to present next week, I highly recommend that you do. If not, I understand, but do understand that when we come back, it's basically going to be all presentations. There's 16 of you on this call or in class right now. That's not even everyone. There's a couple of people who still aren't here. We will have week 13, 14, and 15. That's 3 weeks. So that's 5 presentations a week minimum if we're to get through everyone. And that's without Dr. G or I yapping at you at all. So if we can get a couple of presentations under our belt next week, that would be really, really helpful. If not, really plan on, 5 people, 5 people, 5 people, 6 people, 6 people, 6 people, like back to back presentations. All right. Are there any questions about presentations, about the end of semester activities? Everything should be pretty straightforward from here to the end. The only kind of tricky piece is the poster. Unfortunately, we're still not going to be able to have a poster night. I'll talk with Dr. G before next week, so we can decide what exactly we want to do in lieu of poster night. Plan on making a poster, but whether or not it gets presented in any way, shape, or form, we'll figure out. But any questions on the remaining activities?
I have a question about the presentation.
Yeah.
Did you say it was done in slides?
Yeah, so we typically do those presentations in PowerPoint form. And as I kind of alluded to, one of the things that you want to make sure that you're not doing is writing out every word that you say. And I don't know your background. I don't know a lot of your backgrounds and what your history is with presentations, but even at the professional level, that's a mistake that a lot of people do make. So, communicating the critical information on your slides, using the notes section, having your own notes section. A lot of people, write out verbatim what they want to say on a index card, and they read off the index card, and that's a totally fine place to start. But yes, PowerPoint format, and yeah, we see what you got.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on any of the projects or activities throughout the remainder of the semester?
Mentoring question.
Yeah.
So my mentor that I have for ABA 2 and Practicum 2, she's been sending me, of course, all of her.
Wait, Maddie, hang on. Wrong class. Next
class. You're right.
Right?
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, good.
As soon as you said wait, I was like, oh, we're in 501 right now. Okay.
Save it for an hour and a half, and then we'll jump right in with that.
Okay.
No worries. Any other questions? Okay, cool. So this week, let's see, did we get off? We must have gotten off a week. Where did that happen? 8, 9. Nope, that's right. Okay, cool. This week, I think what we are going to do, the topic for this week is reviewing elements of the method section and possibly beginning data collection or data presentations. I don't know. Does anyone have a presentation for today? I can't imagine that that's the case. No, yeah, no, that's fine. Reviewing elements of the method section and then looking ahead to next week, constructing graphs. Those are a couple of topics that we can kind of put together into one session. And I actually have a graphing presentation that I had done before. I don't know where it lives anymore, but I can dig that up. We can kind of do those together to the degree that we need to. I want to, as we sit today, make sure that you guys are in a good place regarding design. I went over the within subjects designs 2 weeks ago. Dr. G went over the between subjects designs last week, so multiple baseline across participants, behaviors, and settings. And before we go in, I want to revisit design one more time and really make sure that you guys feel good about that. I think that overall experimental design is one of the things that our previous candidates would probably say that they feel the weakest in of all the components of behavior analysis. And I don't want that to be the case for you. So let's revisit those designs a little bit and see where we end up, okay? So starting with the basic within subjects designs or reversal designs. Let's see, if the question is, let's start with this one. What are some of the critical attributes of a sound within subjects or reversal design? Meaning, what are some of the components that we have to have in order to have a good reversal design? Any of the reversal designs.
Baseline.
Okay, good. We have to have a baseline somewhere. Good. What else?
Intervention.
All right, good. Got to do something.
Steady state responding.
Good. Where is steady state responding most critical?
Baseline.
Good. And to a lesser degree, it is also critical in our intervention phases, right? But without that steady state responding in the baseline phase, we can do nothing, right? Good, Sarah. What is, all right, deeper question. What does steady state responding in baseline allow us to apply? What concept does it allow us to apply? A little bit more abstract question.
Baseline logic.
Good, Clarissa. Nice. Baseline logic. Does anyone want to give a shot at what baseline logic tells us?
Does it mean like without an intervention put in place, it would basically be baseline is, it would continue
Yep.
out
Exactly.
behavior?
Yeah, you're kind of cutting in and out or slowing down a little bit, Ryan. But yes, that's absolutely right. So what baseline logic tells us is that without an intervention being put into place, we can expect baseline to continue. Without steady state responding during the baseline phase, we would not have that expectation that baseline would continue as it is because there's nothing to continue. If we have variable responding in baseline, we honestly would expect that variable responding would continue, but that doesn't allow us anything. All right. One of the things that I didn't bring up to you guys, and I don't know if Dr. G did last week, but there are 3 aspects that baseline logic allows us to work with. They are prediction, verification, and control. All right. When we have steady state responding, that allows us, that gives us the baseline from which we can predict future responding, verify subsequent changes in responding, and provide for control of the effectiveness of an intervention. All right. So prediction, verification, and control, those are 3 hallmark concepts within baseline logic and that derive from steady state responding. Okay, good. What are some other critical attributes of steady state responding, or sorry, of reversal designs?
Replication.
Replication, excellent. Can you describe that a little bit more, what you're referring to?
Pretty much being able to take that same design and go into another study with it.
Okay, so there's another level of replication within a reversal design that's just as important. Any thoughts on what that might be?
When you replicate a study, you should get the similar results or the same results. So you would get like technological results every time you replicate it.
So, and I want to make sure that you're referring to the same thing that I'm referring to for both of you. I'm specifically referring to like phases within one's own study. All right, so let me show you what I mean by that. There we go. Nope, that's an ugly color.
You just mean replicating baseline and intervention phase?
Yes, exactly. So if I have assume phase change lines, I'm not going to draw them out. But if these are my steady state responding at each phase, I have good replication. This phase, and this phase, assuming those are all B phases, are equal. This phase, and this phase, assuming they are all A phases, are equal. So that allows me to have replication within the study itself. If my phases look like this, and I can't tell which phase is which, even though I have steady state responding, I don't have replication. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice ascending trend accidentally there. 1, 2, let's do it this way. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I don't have replication. Again, even though I have steady state responding within each phase, I don't have replication of the phase. So with that, I don't have, so that's my verification. I lose prediction, and I have demonstrated that I do not have control. All right. There are some formulae, some mathematical formulas that allow you to look at the percentage of overlap of data if you're struggling to identify whether or not you've actually demonstrated control. You can look at the percentage of overlap of data between phases to determine whether or not there is significant control. I don't have that formula at the tip of my fingertips right now. I apologize, but it is out there if you're looking for a more mathematical way of looking at that. All right, good. So you have replication within a participant between phases. Excellent. What else? How much replication do you need?
2 baseline and 2 intervention.
Excellent. That's your best bet starting point if you're aiming for a sound design. There are situations where you can make an argument for an ABA. I would not be one to advocate for that if you're doing a reversal design. If you're doing a withdrawal design in particular, and you're starting with intervention, then you withdraw and then put intervention back in, so your interventions become your A phase. I could make an applied argument that ABA is sufficient. The applied argument is an ethical argument. It allows you to say, we had to start with an intervention. Our baseline became our intervention level because we had to do something. We reversed just as long as it took us to establish that what we did was actually controlling the behavior. We put it back in and we left it, right? When you have self-injurious behaviors, when you have high magnitude behaviors where reversing out of an intervention is highly questionable, but you need to establish that level of control, then that in that situation, and I can't think of another one, but that ABA is sufficient. But generally speaking, Heidi, you're absolutely right. 2 baselines, 2 interventions as a minimum. Excellent. What about multiple interventions? What if we're looking at an alternating treatments design? What are some critical attributes of the alternating treatments design?
You have to make sure that you are equally comparing intervention to baseline and each of your 2 interventions.
Good, excellent. So there is establishing experimental control becomes harder in an alternating treatments design because you have to worry about things like sequence effects, you have to worry about counterbalances, you have to worry about just the different order of phases more so than you would in a reversal design, because in a reversal you're just doing AB, AB, AB. In alternating treatments where you're comparing 2 or more interventions, you would have these multiple levels, all right? And making sure that you're not just doing ABC, 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 making sure that, you know, sometime even when you put your control conditions back in, A, B, A, C, that you don't repeat that again, A, B, A, C, A, B, A, C. You know, sometimes you want A, B, A, C, sometimes you want A, C, A, B, sometimes you might want A, B, C, A. Not ideal, but that can establish even more control down the line. All right, especially if you find that there is a significant difference between your B and your C. So working with those alternating treatments can be more challenging, but it obviously can be done. There is one particular tactic that we use in the field that relies heavily on an alternating treatments design, but does not have the traditional control condition. It's in there, but it's not quite the same. And it relies on pure randomization. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? What I'm referring to? Something you've all heard of before. Yes, excellent, Christine. So functional analyses rely on alternating treatments designs and the analysis that is able to result in. All right, and we'll talk about some of these graphing components later on in a couple of weeks, and alternating treatments design will be one of those ones that we look at. All right, cool. That's a pretty good overview. I'm really, really happy with the answers that you guys were able to throw out there. If you weren't sure of any of those answers, I would definitely take an opportunity to either follow up with me or Dr. G, look up some of those components, make sure that those pieces that we just went through are all pieces, are components that you're comfortable with. Like I said, I think that those are the critical attributes of those designs. If you feel good about those, you should feel good about the concepts of those reversal designs. Excellent. Moving on to multiple baseline designs. Who wants to tell me a little bit about multiple baseline? What are some critical attributes there? And even if some of the critical attributes are similar or identical to those of the within subjects designs, I want to hear those as well.
Baseline measurements must be identical to make sure you're measuring the right behavior.
Excellent. They must be identical within the participant or between the participants? Or both?
Both, I would say.
Both.
Was
Yeah.
that a question? Okay.
No. The one caveat to that is that, you know, when you talk about something being identical, it's between participants is not going to be perfectly identical. So let's say you're measuring letter acquisition. If one participant doesn't know any of their letter names, and the second participant knows 2 of their letter names, that's not identical. But as long as it's steady and stable and low, that's what you're looking for in terms of identical. So it doesn't have to be numerically identical, but it has to be functionally identical. Good.
Like the same way, like you're still asking for them to perform the letter sound the same way, like just that your measurement is consistent, right?
Gotcha. Yes, absolutely. Good. What else?
Applying treatment at different times.
Good. So we didn't really talk about that in terms of the reversal designs when you have multiple participants and how to identify when to switch from baseline to intervention for each of them. However, we do have the idea of steady state responding to guide us. In a multiple baseline, steady state responding is not going to necessarily be enough. We have to be able to apply our interventions at staggered times. Good. Really quickly, has anyone heard of a delayed multiple baseline design?
Yes, and I hate them because I never understand what I'm looking at whenever
Okay.
I'm reading them, when I'm looking at them in a graph. So please, let's talk about that.
Okay, so we'll get to it in a little bit more detail in a second, but there are some significant issues with the usage of that terminology in the literature, and I do not recommend sticking that in your brain somewhere in the least behavioral way possible, right? Avoid that concept. Avoid confusing yourself with that concept of a delayed multiple baseline design. Understand that every multiple baseline involves the delay of onset of intervention across participants or behaviors or settings. By definition, it has to. All right. What is the significance of that delay? So let me pull up my screen again. So I have, it's always easiest to talk about participants. So participant 1, participant 2, participant 3. I have a baseline, I have a baseline, I have a baseline. I begin an intervention, continue my baseline, continue my baseline. I end my intervention. I start my next intervention, and I continue my baseline. I end my intervention. I end my baseline, and I start my intervention. Now, for those of you who have seen multiple baseline graphs, this is not exactly what they look like. That's fine. That's not what I'm going for just yet. What I'm focusing on are these baseline data points. What is the significance of that delay? Why do we have short, longer, longest? What's the significance of that?
Is it to see if, like in the first intervention, if it generalizes to the others?
So don't, okay. Yes, but I don't love how you worded it.
I didn't know
So
how to, I couldn't think about how to say it.
So you're talking about it in terms of how does this intervention, right, impact, or does it impact any of this, right? So that's, yes, but the way you're saying that is a little bit limiting to what we're looking for. But yeah, absolutely right idea, Heidi. Absolutely the right idea. All right. So there's something underlying what Heidi said that's important to understand, that encompasses what Heidi said as well as some other things. I think that's what I'm getting at. So you got a slice of the pie, but not the whole pie.
We know that the behavior change can be attributed to the intervention and not something else across all participants.
Excellent. Can you sum that up in one word?
Functional.
Close. It's related.
Is it setting events?
Nope.
Extraneous variables.
Nope.
Two.
Correlation.
Nope. But close. You got the first letter
Causation.
and second letter. Control.
Ah,
This is how we demonstrate control in a multiple baseline design. All right. Now remember, I'm going to see how effectively I can do this. I'll do it in a different color. In a reversal design, I demonstrate control by establishing steady state responding at each of these points. A, B, A, B. Being able to go up and then back down and then back up again and hypothetically back down again shows that the intervention is responsible for that control or for that change in levels of behavior. we have this over here. But remember, the types of behaviors that we're looking at, we don't have the ability to go back down. Once you learn your letters, you're not going to unlearn them just because you remove your intervention phase, all right? At that point, we are looking at a performance behavior, one that is governed by reinforcement, and you may forget it based on lack of recent history of reinforcement, all right? That doesn't mean you never knew it or don't know it, okay? So if we don't have the ability to reverse back down, we need something else that will demonstrate that that control still remains. That something else is our continued baseline. All right. I hope you guys would be able to see. Let me switch colors back. That if my graph looks like that, I would not be able to demonstrate control. And because of that lack of control, Sarah, I could not say I had a functional relationship. So that's where that language ties in, okay? In this situation, once my intervention started, my other two baselines started to increase as well without intervention. Now, sometimes this is a good thing. Other times it's a bad thing. Experimentally, it depends on what you're looking at. But depending on the type of thing that you are trying to consider, this might be a problem. Dr. Cohane tells a great story of when she first started doing some research on the TPRA, and her participants were paraprofessionals, TAs in the classroom. They had a checklist of what they were going to be teaching. They were having the conversations in the classroom. They had all these modules set out, whatever their intervention was. And they measured correct learn units prior to intervention. And they had participant 1, participant 2, and participant 3. Then they implemented the intervention with participant 1. Participant 1's learn units started increasing, but so did participant 2's and participant 3's. Why?
Observational learning.
They were listening, right? So they didn't identify a functional relationship because they didn't demonstrate control. They discovered a different component that a different extraneous variable that they had to take into effect or into, they had to consider. But through that, they could not determine whether or not their individual intervention was having an effect. Let's say they were in different rooms and they saw these same patterns of behavior. What might be a cause of that?
They may have talked about it over a lunch break.
Absolutely, right? So these are the types of things that we have to be able to control for to ensure that our data truly tell us what we want to see, okay? So there's lots of different applied implications of these types of graphs and these types of data. Sometimes they are good, sometimes they are not. Let's say you are conditioning something, or you're teaching phonemes through flashcard instruction, and then you're going to move to sight words or phonetic words. And you start to see an increase in phonetic responding based on teaching letter sounds, right? So you might see this increase as your letter sounds improve, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Those behaviors are just too related to experimentally control for them. All right. So not the end of the world, but it allows you to understand what you can and cannot study in terms of establishing a functional relationship within or between a participant. Okay, good, 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 good. Let's go back. Let's see, where were we? We were here, for better or worse. All right, so we have this delayed responding. We have, I don't even remember what else we said. We talked about steady state responding and baseline. What other types of variables do, or what other critical attributes do we have for our multiple baseline designs? How many, we talked about the 2 interventions and 2 baselines for a reversal design. How many participants, behaviors, or settings do we need to look at in order to have a sound multiple baseline design?
At least 2.
At least 2. Good. Is that good enough?
I would say your experimental control increases as you increase your replication of the independent variable and the at the baseline design.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 technically is enough. I would say 2 is better than an AB, but worse than an AB-AB. So it's kind of right in between there. 3 participants or more is better for a multiple baseline design. That's really what you're shooting for, is three participants. Is there a limit? Is there an upper limit to, and I guess I should have asked the same thing for the reversal design. So similarly phrased, can you do too many reversals?
I guess when it's no longer conducive to learning, you would stop. You want to make sure you stop before it's no longer beneficial to learning.
Okay. Okay. What else?
Or if you continue to collect baseline, or like with reversals, you may see that even during baseline, the behavior is being emitted, but it's because the participant's learning from each phase of intervention. They're learning to emit that behavior, and it's reinforced by natural reinforcement contingencies. So
Okay.
even during baseline.
So that's an interesting one, because now you're talking about moving from at a higher level, going from a performance behavior into a learning behavior. So that would be an interesting way of looking at that. Good. What about, I think you're about to say something about the amount of baseline. Maybe not.
I was thinking of naming, but I didn't know if that was where you were going. Like with naming, if you no, okay, never mind.
It's not, but I see where you're going, and we'll come back to that in a second. Is there any issue? I'll ask the question directly. Is there any issue anywhere within the purview of behavior analysis with providing baseline for, say, our 10th participant?
Like collecting baseline for a 10th participant, or for collecting baseline that many times for a participant?
Both.
I saw, I don't want to take credit for it because I didn't think of it myself, but Erin just commented ethical. Like, I agree. Like, if
I didn't see the
you're
chat.
not intervening, then you're not, we're not being ethical. We're not providing an intervention for the maladaptive behavior.
Yep, absolutely, Aaron. Good job, Maddie, picking up on Aaron's comment. That's exactly right. There's absolutely an ethical, absolutely an ethical consideration that needs to be taken into account when you're providing these extended baselines. All right. Having, if you are providing for multiple participants, should probably go like this. baseline, 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 baseline. So you have these gaps in later participants. So these baselines are effectively the same length. That is an appropriate way to conduct a multiple baseline design with probably more than like 4 participants, because this person is still serving control for here, here, and here. There's still a lot of control. And this person is serving for control here, and you have this. So you have just as much control at each level, but that way you're not going 6 months providing baseline for this guy down here without doing any sort of intervention. All right. Good. Good, good, good. All right, are there any other attributes of the multiple baseline design that you would identify as critical? I'm trying to think too. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. So I think we have it pretty well covered. Okay, good. Now, let's talk a little bit. So there are a couple other directions that I want to be able to go with these designs. First of all, these are basic designs. These are not the totality of designs. You will get into positions very, very quickly where you can start combining designs. You can start teasing apart designs. You can start taking components of one design and putting them in another design. And the more complex you get, the better off, the more complex the behavior you are going to look for. All right. So let's say one example of this that I am very comfortable and comfortable with and like is with conditioning. All right. So one way to test for the effects of conditioning is to simply observe how long a child either observes something or plays with something, do an intervention and see if they observe with or play with or manipulate that stimulus for more than they did during baseline. Do something like that, that's straightforward. Do a multiple baseline or a multiple probe design, which we'll talk about in a second, and you move on your merry way. However, duration of attending to a stimulus is not the only possible measure of conditioning. So one way to do that, draw this out. We'll have 2 participants for this, is to do a alternating treatments, or sorry, I guess I would do a multiple probe design embedded within an alternating treatments design. All right. So what am I going to do? I'm going to start with participant 1, and I am going to do a brief functional analysis. And if you're not understanding all of these components, don't worry about it. You'll see in a second. I'm going to do a brief functional analysis for condition reinforcement for a specific stimulus. Then I'm going to intervene. Then I'm going to do that same functional analysis. For my second participant, I have multiple options. I can do the same functional analysis. That's going to be my alternating treatments design and just keep going with it while my participant's in treatment. I can do a multiple probe where I do functional analysis, and go on from there. I think that's kind of it. But here's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to test the effects of tokens functioning as a condition reinforcer for performance tasks. All right. So when I give a child a token, do they perform to earn that token? Whether you're doing it for the token themselves or the backup reinforcer, I don't care. All right. So I have some amount of responding, and I measure, let's do edibles. All right. I'll do it like this. Edibles, no reinforcement. Praise, tokens. No reinforcement, tokens, edibles, praise. Connect the dots. I see that edibles and praise function as highly function as reinforcers. Tokens are around the level of no reinforcement. So I just did an alternating treatments design as my probe to establish that tokens do not function as a reinforcer. I do a similar type of thing assume the levels all work out nicely for my second participant. You guys following so far? I know this is super chicken scratchy. Okay. I'm not going to put my intervention data on here, but I do a conditioning intervention. I don't care what it is. I don't care what your criterion is. I don't care how you got there. I don't care what you did, but you've done something and now believe that tokens are conditioned as a reinforcer. So you go back and you do your functional analysis again. Praise. Edibles, tokens, no reinforcement. Tokens, edibles, no reinforcement, praise. Boom. Tokens up here, tokens up here. Everything else stays the same. See that? I have an alternating treatments design that I'm using as my probes. Nested within that alternating treatments design, I have this little intervention line that I'm going to move over here. Now we start to see something a little bit more familiar. Morse code over here. Boom, 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 so on and so forth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry, this is really ugly. That's kind of where probe 1. How many times did I do that? I did that. That was really bad. My bad, guys. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Let's shove another one in there. This is my control that's occurring during my intervention phase. And then my post-intervention phase lines up with my post-intervention phase here. So I'm using an alternating treatments design to demonstrate control within the participants. Okay. And then replicating that alternating treatments design as I intervene as my baseline to show control between the participants. So the fact that over here, my tokens continue to not function as a reinforcer while my participant 1 is while they're going through the conditioning procedure, and while I get to my post probe, shows that it indeed, and then the fact that it also increases. Wow, that got really bad really fast. I apologize. That allows me to say that it was indeed my conditioning procedure that caused this behavior change in the value of tokens as a reinforcer. The chicken scratches are terrible. I get that. But are you guys all following that? Do you see how I combined the alternating treatments design and the concepts of the alternating treatments design with the concepts of a multiple baseline design to more thoroughly demonstrate the effects of the reinforcers? Total silence.
Yes.
Got one yes. Good.
But would you say, but there was still some degree of control shown on the first one, right?
What do you mean?
You still showed with the
Like
first
if
participant.
are you saying that if I did this myself,
You'd still say that
or
that showed some degree of control just for
by
participant
itself?
1. Yes. Well, for just the first participant, just
No.
the whole alternating treatment.
You're
without
saying okay, so you're saying if I did, let me get a different color. If I let these data
yes.
stand on their own, would I get published?
Well, yeah, maybe not published, but
Why not? That should absolutely be
yeah, I
the
don't
question.
know.
That should
Yeah.
absolutely be the question. Is my
Yeah, I don't know.
design publication worthy? That absolutely is your question. Whether or not you get published, different story. Is my design publication worthy? So that's the question on the table. Is this design publication worthy? Here's what you are asking in that concept. We have a standalone design right here. We have multiple replications of alternating treatments that demonstrate control. What has this told us? What has that very first box told us?
Reinforcer.
The MO.
Or lack thereof related to tokens, right? It's basically told us that tokens are a functionally different stimulus than praise and edibles. That's it. All right. As a research question in and of itself, not very interesting. We know that tokens are physically different. We know that they can be functionally different. Like this first part doesn't tell us anything experimentally interesting. The fact that I have some intervention that was able to condition tokens is a little bit more interesting, right? But as soon as I add this intervention in, I have to have my second participant in order to show, because I am changing behavior. Once I've conditioned the token, I shouldn't be able to simply uncondition it. Or if I can, I'm putting in another punishment intervention or a punishment intervention. Things are going to look really different. All right. So while there are whole designs within this, I am requiring the whole thing to show something. Now, Ashley, there was absolutely a time where this first part probably could have, as a question in and of itself, probably could have gotten published. But they beat that horse to a bloody pulp through functional analyses. You can't just do a functional analysis anymore and get published, right? We know it's a thing. We know the design works. We know it shows something. That question has been answered. And that's what I did here. I did a functional analysis.
So it's basically it's just not noteworthy.
Yeah, exactly. Is it a publishable design? Yeah. Is it a publishable design when you add in the research question? No, because it doesn't tell us anything. It doesn't tell us anything meaningful. It is a basic science question if there was one. But now when I add in the intervention, I now have an applied question that is interesting. Maybe my intervention was something that was really cool, right? So at that point, we're starting to look at something that's more meaningful, all right? The short of it here is that design is, the word that comes to mind is elegant. When you have an elegant design, you have a design that is going to show you a lot in a potentially complex way that is very clear. All right? Clarity in your design is key. If you can't tell what on earth happened because of the design that you used, the data are meaningless, right? We have to clearly be able to demonstrate control and be able to show that the behavior change happened as a result of the change in the variables. All right. So an elegant design is one that does that in a very clear way. Does that concept make sense? I think it does. I think you guys are following along. Good. All right. Let's pop back to one other thing. Let's talk about multiple probe designs. All right. A multiple probe design is a variation on a multiple baseline design. All right. When a continual baseline is either not ethical, not practical, or not meaningful, it can be appropriate to take simple probe data points to show that that your baseline is established. All right. The more, I'll put it this way, the more concrete the behavior, the less time you need to establish baseline. All right. If I am measuring, let's see. Let's say I have not conditioned my child to sit in a chair yet. All right. And my independent variable is going to be some table or chair conditioning procedure that I'm going to measure in a post-intervention probe or baseline. My child sometimes sits in the chair, sometimes doesn't sit in the chair. I only have them for a couple hours a day, so I don't have this huge window. Sometimes they have a lot of energy, sometimes they're kind of tired. There's going to be a lot of natural variation in those behaviors. So where I may have, if these are minutes going up here, day 0, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. All right. There's variability in this. right? But if we extend that out to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes, that's going to look down there, right? So this checks out, even though it has a lot of variability, when it's extended to the ceiling that I'm providing, all right? But we know that just because we got a 0 here does not mean we're going to get a 0 the rest of the way. So in this situation where there is natural variability in the baseline amounts of behavior, we need to truly get a baseline over multiple days. Compare that with, oops, here we go. Letter names. Day 1. Kid doesn't know their letter names. Day 2. Kid doesn't know their letter names. Day 3. Still haven't intervened. Kid doesn't know their letter names. Day 4. Day 5. Day 6. I've established steady state responding, right? Go me. But I knew back here, and I had a pretty good idea here, that I was going to have steady state responding and be able to apply baseline logic. All right. In that situation, a multiple probe design where you take minimum of 2, maybe 3 data points of baseline as your probe, and you move on to intervention. You do not wait for established steady state responding, because there's going to be nothing that induces the behavior. There's nothing that's going to happen in the kid's environment that is going to all of a sudden get them to know their letters. Assuming, you've told the kid's parents, don't teach them their letters in the next 2 days. Okay. Where's my, see if I can do this. Nope. There we go. Cool. So start my intervention. It's fantastic. I've done 1. I've done 2. What am I doing with this participant? Do I keep going the entire time they're in intervention? Question for you guys. No. Erin's shaking her head no. Anyone else think no? Anyone think yes? How do I treat
Wouldn't you do the delay?
Okay, so that dreaded word came back. Good. So what does that mean to you?
Well, I know before you had not circled, but there was a gap from the start of your line to when you started baseline. So yeah, like those 3 or 4 data points wouldn't be there.
Okay.
Because you would wait to start the probe.
Okay, so something like that?
Yeah.
All right, good. What do you guys think? Yay, nay, unsure?
You could do that, but I feel like there's another way for you to do that and actually start intervention sooner with your second participant.
Yeah, it seems like the
Okay.
drawbacks are still there.
Okay. Like what? Now, and I will caveat, I'm giving you a very cut and dry example that is probably not the best. It's not the most real world example that you're going to be working with. Okay. So we're talking about a 0 level responding behavior here. the number of behaviors of interest where you have 0 level responding are very, very small. All right. So, Sarah, conceptually, you're right, because we have this 0 level responding. All right. We've established pretty much without question that there is nothing that is, the behavior is not there. All right. The problem is, and this is the problem that most readers have with the delay, is, Sarah, what you, the justification you brought up assumes that there's already somebody else up above that provided this level of control, right? So remember, when we had that delay, that was for participants 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? Those were for those later participants, okay? But this is a whole lot of baseline for something that very clearly does not need a whole lot of baseline. So what can we do instead? I will say this, you are correct about taking out some data points, but where do we take them out?
You take out the back half of the data points.
What do you guys think?
Would you probe at the beginning of your study and then before the intervention, or before each phase, like the beginning of each phase?
Good.
For the second participant?
Yeah. So, Aaron, you nailed it. Where my eraser go? Taking out these middle data points allows us to say there's an amount of behavior when we started, identical, as Maddie said at the beginning, and that same amount exists right before. Despite all this intervention, nothing changed. So we have steady state responding. We have data at the beginning. We have data at the end. We have, what else do we have? We have everything we need. And we have now one additional data point, maybe 2, than we did at the top. But either way, you would easily be able to make the argument that baseline logic exists. All right. So in a multiple probe design, it is acceptable to start everyone at the same time, but then not conduct additional probes for future participants until that first participant has reached the end of their intervention phase. What about a third participant? So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I'm skipping intervention. We have a post probe, 1, 2. Intervention. Here's my post probe. But what about in here? Do I just probe after my second participant has finished? Or must I probe each time at the appropriate times?
I feel like you would just do it after the second participant's probe.
Okay, so you're voting for that guy.
You've already demonstrated that the second participant didn't have any behavior change in response to the first participant getting the intervention.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily say you have to do that again.
Okay.
Although, I mean, I guess doing it again would increase your control.
Okay. Good. Good. I like how you said that. What else? What are the thoughts? Someone take a stab.
It seems like you would want to go ahead and do the ones in the middle. Because if you don't, you can't go back to probe it. Basically, if you wait till after the second person's probe, it's too late if you find that you needed that data, if that makes sense.
Okay.
But I feel like if we have, like at this point, if you've done 6 probe sessions without an intervention, you're back to like repetitive probes without an intervention for a behavior.
Okay.
That was kind of my hesitancy of wanting to do it in the middle.
Good. Good. Any other thoughts? It's not a straightforward question. And I think you could probably, depending on the behavior, make an argument either way. I would prefer what I have here. If I'm going to take one out, I'll take one of those middle guys out. Maddie, that kind of balances that efficacy of doing too many probes. The reason you want to have something in the middle is, remember, these probes are providing a control for these data. If you take this out here, yeah, this was there, but you don't specifically have a control for these data. Also, what if that was like that?
Yeah, you would want to know why. You would need to probe it in the middle
Yeah,
to have that control, like you said.
exactly. The more control, the more participants you have going down, remember, that's just like the more reversals you have, right? That provides the control. So the more opportunities you have to say, look, I had 15 people and none of them got anywhere, the better off you are, to a point, obviously, right? So I do think at least having that one probe in between is going to be significant. Now, typically, oh, my cat's gonna start headbutting my hand as I'm trying to draw, which is only gonna help my drawing. I'm gonna show you guys this, but I don't want this to get in your way. Probe, intervention, post-probe. Probe, intervention, post-probe. Get these in here. Probe, intervention, post-probe. Super basic, right? Before each of my interventions, I have a data point that shows the absence of responding. All right. This is typically what is called a delayed multiple probe design. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right. You have no control while the first intervention or second intervention are going on. All right. Reviewers are across the board rejecting this design. I'm saying this as this is the design that we see in many of the CABA studies that were published in the 2000s. All right. This design is problematic. It does not allow for enough experimental control to truly demonstrate a functional relationship.
So is this,
Now,
this is what you would get if you did what I originally said and not conduct additional probes?
correct.
Okay. I just want to
Yes.
make sure I'm following you.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. All right. If nothing else, you want to have that first data point. All right. You still run into that second problem. But at minimum, you get something. This is better. I actually, when I did my dissertation, I actually did that, what I just told you not to do. So I had this, second, intervention. Intervention. The reviewer said no. The reviewer said this is still a problem. And I forget what I called the design. I called it something else. I didn't call it a delayed multiple probe. I'd have to look it up. I gave it a tact of some sort, but it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough. If your data are really, really clear, if it's the type of thing, I would argue naming being one of those things, where that could be where things aren't going to change without intervention. You could make an argument, but your data have to be crystal clear. And they rarely are. They rarely are.
I was thinking that was my next question. Like before, I was waiting for you to finish so that I could ask you, because I feel like that's what you see with naming. There's no need to do like 6 probes. If they don't have it, they're not just going to get it without intensive instruction.
Yeah. Now, I will say that recent data, as many of us know with naming, show exactly why you do need to do those multiple probes in case you get an ascending trend just from the probes. But that's a different story for a different day.
Well, right. Yeah. If they have uni, then that does change that.
Exactly. Okay. Awesome job today, guys. How do you guys feel about designs overall? Chapters you've read, the quizzes you've taken, you got 3 lectures on these now. Do you feel a little bit better about the types of designs you're looking at? And more importantly, I feel that we do a good enough job at ensuring that you guys can tack the designs, but really understanding why a particular design was chosen and what one design over another shows. That's where you really get the meat of the meal on that. All right. So as I think I said a couple of weeks ago, as you guys are doing your research summaries and looking at the designs that are used, really make sure that you give yourself the opportunity to understand why they use those designs and what it allows them to show that another would not. Or conversely, is there a different design that might have allowed them to show something more or more meaningful? All right. Awesome. So next week is going to be a review of what goes into a method section and a little piece on graphing. Again, there might be a recording that goes up for the graphing component. And if anyone is brave enough to start presentations, we'd love to see what you guys are thinking of. All right. Awesome. 5:93, about 10 minutes, and we'll hop on. All right. Have a good one, guys.